the vaccines are not as they have been sold. That is to say, they do not, in a general sense, aid the broader populace in the reduction of disease. The only thing they appear to have any evidence for is that sometimes vaccines actually could be said to have lessened the impact of a particular disease on you. So even the regular flu shot doesn't mean you won't get flu. Their theory is that your flu would be less ferocious, but there's no real evidence of that other than this one or two studies that they've got, and a lot of that is conjecture. And actually, if you plot vaccines as they're introduced into the society, for instance, the Salk polio vaccine, the great, hail, hail, we're on top of disease forever thing in the 50s, that as a child, I was forced to suck on sugar cubes and get shots and all this kind of stuff as they kept introducing all these vaccines. And yet, when we look at it statistically, the Salk polio vaccine came about 7 months, was introduced to the populace about 7 months after polio had peaked and dropped to its low-level, quote, sustainability point or carry trade point within the disease vector itself. So in other words, it was like 8 months after all the horses had left and the barn was mostly burned down, you decided to shut the door, and then claimed that shutting the door saved everything. So the whole vaccine business is really a risky proposition, and I actually am very encouraged because recent polls are showing that over 60% of the people in the U.S. are actually questioning whether they will accept a swine flu vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know I'm not taking one.
That's going to throw the powers that be into a bit of a little tizzy, I think.
Oh yeah, I think that's where the whole martial law card comes in. Is that's their backup. If we won't do it willingly, then they're going to find a way to try to make us do it.
I don't believe that, and the reason
Really?
I don't has to do with logistics.
Okay.
You have to understand that martial law means what? It doesn't mean troops on the street. By definition, martial law simply means that the civilian court structure is suspended, and all legal or law enforcement matters would be handled by a military court structure. That's the actual definition of martial law. So it doesn't even really imply occupation forces.
So it's more in a legal context.
Correct. And actually what it says is that, if you got picked up for speeding under conditions of martial law, then you would be turned over to a military court system.
Oh,
and
great.
you wouldn't go through your local provincial or county court system for your DWI or whatever. And instead you'd go to a military court system. In effect, we always associate mentally, in the context of martial law, we always think of it as occupation, because usually the two go hand in hand. They need not, but let's assume that they did it in this case. If you took every single person in the United States military, regardless of their job category, and I'm talking about people that are clerks, but actual people that have signed the oath with the military and have signed the contract, not subcontractors, just regular guys that are in the military, in the Navy, Air Force, even the Coast Guard, Marines, all of them total, and you did it all the way up to the generals, and you took them all out of the Pentagon, and you gave them all guns that in the United States continental landmass, that is, we have enough soldiers, sailors, etc., to put 1 per 10 square miles. And that's the concentration level we could achieve, which means that if they were going to do some kind of an occupation or use a martial law excuse to try and force a vaccine, they would have to take another tact on it. That is to say, they couldn't simply do it by sheer force of numbers.
Well, they would fail.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, I think they would fail miserably if they tried to just do it troop versus people. We have them severely outnumbered and pretty much outgunned, I would say, these days.
Correct. And so what they'll do is they will use a different pattern of social engineering to try and coerce or heighten the voluntary acceptance of the vaccine. And this might get to the point where a local representative would call you and claim to be, and probably would be, working at your local county health department and say, okay, Mr. Bill, I want you to come down and get your shot. When can we schedule you and your wife and your 2 daughters? And Mr. Bill would say, well, what are you talking about? And they would say, well, we're calling from your local county health department, and you have to come down and get your shot. Our records show that no one in your family has gotten a shot. You better come down and get your vaccine right away. And they'll basically use a lot of language to imply that there's some nasty else on the other side of it.
Like fines or whatnot.
If we tried that again here for instance, in the county I'm in, and they were not using military, but they were going to rely on local law enforcement, we've only got 4 sheriff's deputies in the county. We're under huge budget constraints. All of our local police are barely hanging on by a thread budgetarily, and the stress on the whole system is such that they're probably, I would say that all law enforcement total probably in Thurston County probably doesn't come to more than 600 individuals, and I'm even talking jail guards.
Wow.
So it'd be awful hard to use a local system to impress that kind of a system on 150,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So for a lot of reasons, I doubt that there will be a, quote, forced vaccination, or even a roundup for that matter. And I've got buddies of mine, let's look at the FEMA camps issues, right?
Yes.
Okay, I've got friends of mine that say, well, they're building these FEMA camps all over and stuff. And I say, okay, and do you have any evidence of that? And they send me these contracts, which I've seen, the Halliburton and KBR and some of the other contracts that the government has let in the United States for the building of these detention camps. And indeed, some have been built, because I'm able to go and look at resources that show the purchase of cement, the allocation of phone subcontractors, people that come on in and do wiring, all of this kind of stuff for a couple of the camps along in the southern tier of states that are related to the immigration issue. And even these are relatively small, and they're not really FEMA camps. They were built by Halliburton for the INS. And we're talking about camps that at most would hold 3,000 individuals and had housing and structure and so on. But the point being that it was easy to go into the federal government registers and online material and track all their expenditures on all the cement required and so on. And I have not been able to confirm the creation of these 800 FEMA camps or whatever are supposed to be out there in the various states by virtue of the resources being used. So there may indeed have been contracts, and they may have built them and done some sneaky kind of accounting so that it doesn't show up in the local cement prices in Chicago or Las Vegas, that they're building a large camp there that's going to consume cement for 30 or 40 or 50 days.
Yeah.
I just don't see any cement price spikes in any of these areas that supposedly have these camps built. So on the main, I would say there's a lot of rumor, but I sure haven't seen a lot of evidence for FEMA having camps that could incarcerate anything close to a significant portion of the populace. And then there's one other way to look at it, and that is that we don't need a camp. We're already living in one.
Basically. Very true, very true.
So, I mean, we can probably leave that subject there if you want. There's a lot to be paranoid about. They're trying to kill us all off, but some of the grosser ideas of, white trains full of shackles with guillotines and giant installations at the end of the trains, I don't see any evidence for.
Well, it could just be part of a PSYOP, kind of a fear tactic thing. If we know the camps are there, then that gives us something else to worry about.
Correct, and I would agree with that. There are PSYOPs going on all the time.
There's one thing that's a little ambiguous, and that's the it's happening every day. Chemtrails, like, what is it? Is it, is this part of the inevitable plan, the transformation that we're talking about, or are we? Yeah,
it's a very scary thing. To not be worried about it really is freaky. And I know people that say, "Oh yeah, I see them, but I'm not worried about them."
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's in it, right? What's going on? It's obviously not good for us if it's so secretive.
And there's another issue is, I actually suffered from it. Yesterday I lost 24 hours, actually 25 hours, to a sinus headache that is directly chemtrail related. Even though we've got heavy rains going on at the moment, they're spraying like mad on the other side of those. You can hear the planes go over, and of course the rains wash it down.
Right.
And also these sinus attacks that I've had that yield these headaches have existed only since the chemtrail phenomenon in this area in earnest since 1998. I saw my first set of undeniable chemtrails in '97, and from that point on I've been really wondering, and initially I wanted to buy the idea that it was all about the change of the albedo, that it was an attempt to throw off the extra energy that's coming in. Right. And that may be one of the reasons that they originally started it, because that's where most of the patents go that are related to chemical aerosols. But the composition of these things is so weird that it now has to be assumed that it is yet another one of their, by that I mean the powers that be's, tools against us. And as a rule now, if I know they're spraying, I'm not outside doing anything.
Yeah, that's good advice. I try to stay indoors also and keep the kids in.
So, but even so, that's kind of to a certain extent, it's a false hope, because unless you've got really good full air system for the house filtering, likely we're still all going to be breathing it.
Yeah, you're breathing the air regardless. It gets in one way or the other.
Do you have any
And
idea?
aluminum, oh, I'm sorry, aluminum, by the way, one of the main components that can be validated everywhere, is a known, or has a known causal link to Alzheimer's and so on, but has also been used by the military as a dust in previous episodes to cause mental confusion among displaced persons and prisoners and so on.
Oh, yeah. In regards to the aluminum, I've also heard something along the lines of the micro aluminum particles in the chemtrails could also have some kind of component that allows them to interact with HARP. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that would make sense, but I don't know that HARP is an ionosphere heater, and it's part of their whole scalar weapons thing. And I've also heard some very extensive researchers who say that, well, the barium and all of this is being sprayed to enable the military to use around the horizon radar and get 3D battle images for the Navy, and that it's all a Navy program. And I've actually found some support for that, in the sense that the initial chemtrail patents and everything all do trace back to the Navy. So they were at least at the beginning of this, but it probably has grown way beyond their initial concepts about and what we're trying to do.
So HARP
Nonetheless,
really...
it's not good that we're breathing in this crud, and it's also not good that they're beaming all this stuff up to heat up the atmosphere in a particular time of our planet when our ionosphere is already weak and under a lot of pressure because the magnetosphere is degrading.
Yes. Well, hey, let me throw a couple keywords out there for you, Cliff. I'm trying to watch the chat here. I want to be sure to get to some people's questions.
Sure.
Let me throw out some keywords at you, and then I'll just let you take it and cover them how you feel is important.
Okay.
Definitely the 15% thing is something. The global shift, as far as consciousness, and let me scroll up here a little bit. Somebody asked about, is high resonance the key to transcending these troubles? And
no, actually, I don't think we transcend anything, and it's foolish to even think that way. You know, the whole idea of peace, light, and love forever doesn't really fit universe. Universe
Right.
as a rule seems to be more of a, if I have to use an analogy, I would say it's a dojo, and we're here to learn our combative arts, to get over our fears, and to progress to some level of personal centeredness. And the universe throws at us what we require, not what we think we want.
Yeah, well, it would appear that, like, you know, even the concept of peace, love, and light, it's a great thing, and the unity is a great thing. It's a great concept, but it's still a part of duality.
Correct. You'd never know one without the other. So,
Exactly.
so basically, in terms of high resonance, is an interesting thought, and perhaps even of some value. But it almost is as though, on the other part of it, is to overcome or escape these troubles, and I don't think we should. I think we should, embrace it and jump in. But then again, I've got Mars dominating my natal sun or some damn thing, and so I'm a martial artist, and I can't help myself. There will be a lot of people that simply won't react that way.
What do you think about this moon bombing? I'm seeing that over and over and over in here. What's your input on that?
That's really strange. I'm sure, of course, that we're not being told anything close to what was the whole point of it. The idea of all the water and stuff. Yeah, that might be a plausible explanation, but it seems kind of spurious. I actually think they're trying to hide something, in the sense that I have no real evidence to suggest this, but at a gut level, my impression is that they were going to blow up something they didn't want others to see.
Like maybe ruins or something of that nature? Or
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Like maybe ruins or maybe even a possible covert base that our government has there or another government?
I would suspect that's the case, yeah. Yeah, ruins or a base that we've got there. There appears to be, in spite of the woo-woo nature of saying it even, there appears to be more and more evidence leaking